2 more coming. Excellent. Before we start, just so you can plan for next week, we will be briefing Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. We will not be briefing Friday. There'll be people here in the office. I mean, obviously not Thursday because we're closed, but Friday we'll just post things up on online unless there's an emergency, which these days can happen. But we don't plan to have an in-person briefing on Friday. All right. Also, just on programming for Monday, we will have a guest because it is the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. We will be joined by Nyaradza Gumbonzvanda, the Deputy Executive Director of UN Women, along with Delphine Shantz, the Director of the New York Office of the UN Office of Drugs and Crime, and Calliope Mingeru, the Chief of Ending Violence Against Women section of UN Women. They will be as our guests to present the report Femicide in 2023, Global Estimates of Intimate Partner Family Member Femicide. Our Secretary General, as you know, is still in COP29 in Baku. Today he met with various parties to listen to their views and find their ways they can come together to adopt an ambitious agreement. Among the parties he met there were representatives of the European Union, of Brazil, of India, South Africa, the United Kingdom, the United States, and of course the presidency of the COP. He's continuing his contacts as we speak. The COP officially ends today, but as you know, it has a tendency to run on a little bit. Today, our colleagues at the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tells us that 2024 has now become the deadliest year on record for aid workers, with 281 humanitarian workers killed this year. That surpasses the previous record of 280 workers who lost their lives just last year. The Undersecretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, Tom Fletcher, said humanitarian workers are being killed at an unprecedented rate, with their courage and humanity being met with bullets and with bombs. He urges states and parties to conflict to protect humanitarian workers, to uphold international law, to prosecute those responsible, and call time on this era of impunity. The war in Gaza is driving up the number of aid workers' deaths, with more than 320 humanitarian workers, personnel killed in the Gaza Strip since October 7, 2023. Many were killed in the line of duty while providing humanitarian assistance, and as you know, most of the fatalities have been UNRWA workers. There are also a high level of violence, of kidnapping, injuries, harassment, and arbitrary detention reported of aid workers reported in Afghanistan, in Sudan, and Ukraine, among other countries. There's lots more in a press release from our colleagues at OCHA. Moving to Lebanon, where earlier today 2 rockets struck the Sector West UN headquarters of the peacekeeping force in Lebanon. That is located in Shama, which is obviously in the south. Unfortunately, 4 UNIFIL peacekeepers were injured. They're currently receiving treatment at the mission's medical facility. Thankfully, none of the injuries are life-threatening. The 2 rockets were likely launched by Hezbollah or by affiliated groups. They impacted a bunker and a logistics area in Shama, causing significant damage to nearby infrastructure. One of the affected structures caught fire, but the blaze was swiftly put out by UN colleagues. On the 3rd attack, this is the 3rd attack on this UNIFIL base in Shama in a week. Furthermore, today's attack comes amid heavy shelling and ground skirmishes in the Sharma and Nakora areas in recent days. UNIFIL strongly urges the parties to this conflict to avoid fighting next to UNIFIL position. The inviolability of UN premises and its personnel must be respected at all times. We remind all parties that any attack against peacekeepers constitutes a serious violation of international law and, of course, UN Security Council Resolution 1701. Meanwhile, we remain concerned about ongoing hostilities between Hezbollah and the Israel Defense Forces. Our peacekeepers report continued clashes, exchanges of fire, as well as airstrikes. We at all levels continue to support efforts towards a ceasefire and a diplomatic solution. On the humanitarian front and staying in Lebanon, our OCHA colleagues tell us that intense airstrikes continue to have a devastating impact on civilians and in civilian infrastructure across Lebanon. They remain extremely concerned for the safety and well-being of civilians amid the escalating violence. As temperatures plummet in the region, we fear that humanitarian conditions for those forced to flee their homes will only worsen. Among the most pressing needs are adequate shelter and winter assistance. Our UNHCR colleagues tell us that despite attacks and damage caused by Israeli airstrikes on a number of border crossings and roads, people continue to flee intensified bombardment in Lebanon, mainly on foot. Most of the arrivals, 80% of them, are women and children. We and our partners are providing the necessary winter assistance, including warm blankets, clothing to displaced people. Since September of this year, we and our partners have delivered more than 500,000 mattresses, blankets, pillows, and sleeping bags, among other items. And on the food response, since the 23rd of September this year, our partners have delivered more than 8 million meals and other food items to displaced people, both in shelters and those who are seeking refuge in host communities. Meanwhile, we're supporting a network of 44 health facilities across the country while providing life-saving equipment, including trauma kits. What is needed, however, is an urgent ceasefire to stop the spiraling violence. Moving south to Gaza, the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tells us that 40 families in Nuseirat in central Gaza lost their shelter and belongings after school there that was being used as a shelter was struck just 2 days ago. That attack killed 7 people, including 2 children, and injured more than 20 others. Our colleagues from OCHA and the UN Mine Action Service visited the area in the wake of the attack to assess people's needs and to help to mobilize humanitarian assistance. Meanwhile, people in parts of North Gaza Governorate are fighting for survival after weeks under Israeli siege, with more shelling and destruction reported in Beit Lahiya yesterday. There have been no rescue services in besieged areas in more than 40 days. As hostilities continue, aid operations across Gaza are still facing major access restrictions, particularly in Rafah and North Gaza Governorate. This is severely limiting the critical delivery of food, medical supplies, and fuel supplies, including those needed to power water wells, and deepening an already dire humanitarian situation. OCHA reports that as of today, only about a third of the 129 planned humanitarian missions in Gaza over the past week were facilitated by Israeli authorities. The rest were either denied, impeded, or canceled due to security or logistical reasons. As winter nears, Palestinians across the Gaza Strip are in dire need of adequate shelter to protect them from the rain and cold. Our partners are distributing tents, tarpaulins, and as quickly as possible, but just a fraction of what is actually needed in that area. Hundreds of thousands of displaced Palestinians living in makeshift sites and damaged buildings urgently require shelter assistance, with the ongoing siege in North Gaza driving needs even higher. According to the latest data from our partners working on the shelter response, more than 36,000 tarpaulins and some 58,000 sealing off kits have been procured and are waiting to be brought into Gaza. These supplies are enough to benefit more than 76,000 families, or roughly 400,000 people. Meanwhile, yesterday in Gaza Governorate, our partners providing hot meals to nearly 57,000 displaced people in a dozen shelters. Water trucking reached nearly 18,000 people in 20 shelters, and cleaning services were provided to more than 29,000 displaced Palestinians in 47 shelters. Our partners also reached dozens of women displacement sites in Gaza City with counseling sessions, and our partners are also providing water, sanitation, hygiene support in Gaza, wrapped up a 2-day mission to Gaza City where they explored ways of expanding desalination work there. Just want to flag a rather bleak report from the World Food Program, which today launched, World Food Program today launched an urgent appeal for 2025, calling for $16.9 billion to address global food needs and the alarming gap between needs and resources. WFP's flagship Global Outlook 2025 shows that 343 million human beings across 74 countries are acutely food insecure. That's a 10% increase from last year and just shy of the record hit during the pandemic. According to the report, an estimated 1.9 million people are on the brink of famine. The number of people facing catastrophic hunger, specifically in Gaza and in Sudan, as well as parts of South Sudan, Haiti, and Mali, has reached unprecedented levels. For the next year, WFP says it will continue adapting responses to each country's specific needs and deliver high-quality programs. And just an example of needs and the challenges to meet those needs. In Sudan, the World Food Programme announced today that food aid convoy arrived in North Darfur Zamzam's camp for the first time since famine was confirmed in August. The combination of fighting around North Darfur's capital El Fasher and impassable roads brought on by the rainy season from June to September cut off incoming transport and food assistance for months. To give you an example, it took this convoy 2 weeks to reach Zamzam camp from the Adre crossing. Basically, it took them 2 weeks to drive 400 kilometers, which is about 250 miles. WFP says that further convoys remain en route to other hard-to-reach areas. This includes 14 locations that WFP characterizes as hotspots in Sudan due to the severity of the food insecurity and the risk of famine. In total, the trucks will carry 17,500 tons of food assistance, enough to feed 1.5 million people for 1 month. Since September, WFP has delivered food assistance to an estimated average 2 million people each month across Sudan. The agency expects that this number will grow with its latest surge in its operations across the country. And just to underscore that, sadly, Sudan is home to half of the world's population facing catastrophic hunger. WFP reiterates its call to all border crossings into Sudan to remain open and fully operational so life-saving aid can pour in. And just in South Sudan, our peacekeeping mission there reports that sporadic heavy gunfire took place in Juba yesterday evening. The mission tells us that the situation now is calm and people are gradually resuming their normal activities. Although significant military presence remains in place in parts of the city, the mission will continue to monitor the developments. And our newly minted emergency relief coordinator, Tom Fletcher, has allocated $2.5 million from the Central Emergency Response Fund to swiftly respond to floods in Guinea. The new funds will go towards providing health, food, water, and education support to more than 60,000 people in remote areas. Since early August this year, floods in Guinea have damaged critical infrastructure and impacted more than 175,000 people, forcing men, women, and children to flee their homes. And closer to us here in New York, in Haiti, our humanitarian colleagues tell us that escalating violence continues to drive people from their homes in the Port-au-Prince metropolitan area. According to the International Organization for Migration, as of today, more than 40,000 people have been displaced in the capital since November 11th due to increased violence by armed groups. Despite the very volatile situation and limited access, the United Nations and our partners continue to try to respond to the growing humanitarian needs. Since 18 November, humanitarian organizations have provided more than 250,000 liters of water to cover 10,000 people in 6 displacement sites in Port-au-Prince. UNICEF has also distributed water and hygiene kits to 10,000 people, while IOM continues to truck water to newly created displacement sites. On the health front, mobile clinics are supporting 15,000 people with medical consultations. Since the 16th of November, the World Food Programme has been providing food to 38,000 displaced people daily. Despite the continuing challenges, we are committed to providing the assistance to people in need together with local authorities and our partners. And I was asked for reaction to the attacks that took place in Pakistan yesterday. The Secretary General strongly condemns the attack in Pakistan's Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province that took place yesterday and which reportedly led to the death of at least 42 people. The Secretary General stresses that attacks against civilians are unacceptable. He extends his deepest condolences to the families of the victims and the government of Pakistan, and he calls on the government to conduct an investigation to ensure those responsible are held to account. Moving back to Europe and to Ukraine, our colleagues at OCHA tell us that ongoing hostilities continue to drive up humanitarian needs in regions along the front lines. As winter approaches, repeated attacks on energy infrastructure are making Ukrainians' lives even more difficult and making Ukrainians even more vulnerable. Our humanitarian colleagues tell us that this morning civilians were killed or injured in a strike in Sumy city in the northeast of the country. Meanwhile, authorities in the frontline areas of Donetsk and Kherson regions reported civilian casualties over the course of yesterday. And yesterday, nearly 110 frontline towns and villages in the Donetsk region were reported without electricity, without gas, or without water. We, along with our humanitarian partners, continue to provide emergency assistance to people impacted by the attacks and to distribute winter supplies. Today, a humanitarian convoy reached the frontline community of Bilozherka in southern Ukraine with hygiene and medical supply, as well as mattresses, bedding, winter clothes, and assistance. Some 10,000 people in more than 24 villages still live in the area, less than half of the population prior to the escalation of the war by the Russian Federation. This was the 42nd humanitarian convoy in Ukraine this year. And Sunday is World Conjoined Twins Day. Conjoined twins case is a rare condition where the estimated incidence can be 1 in 50,000 births. This day, a reminder of the need to scale up efforts to build and strengthen quality, people-centered, sustainable, resilient health systems. Edie.
Thank you, Steph. On the deadliest year for aid workers being this year, I know you gave the number of
It's 281. 200.
right,
I mean,
and 220 in Gaza. Does whatever the announcement have list the other countries?
yes, it does. And this is the tragic part is that we've gone past last year's number before December even gets underway.
And not finished.
No, I would never presume that you're finished with me, Edie.
And on the UNIFIL injuries in Lebanon, I might have missed it, but did you say where these peacekeepers?
They're Italian peacekeepers.
They're
I did not. You did not miss it, but I'm confirming to you that they're from Italy.
And on Mr. Fletcher, since he's been actually making statements, are we going to have a chance to meet him?
I very much hope you will have a chance to meet him. He's kicking off some travel. I think he was very keen to start his tenure by going to the field, to see our operations, to see the people we're able to help, and of course to see the challenges that humanitarian workers face. I think there'll be some announcement on where he's going over the weekend, and then we'll try to get him here afterwards. Signore.
Thank you very much, Steph. On the attack on UNIFIL, can you confirm the responsibility? Had the UN any contact with the responsible party to clarify what happened or complain? And will it have any impact on the positioning and safety of the personnel?
What I can tell you is that obviously our peacekeeper, this is not the first time that a peacekeeping installation has been attacked, right? And I think what we have seen is the courage and the determination of the UNIFIL peacekeepers to stay in position, and they have. This will not alter in any major way, great way, shape, or form the posture of UNIFIL. Yes, sir.
Thanks, Steph. Do you have any update on the 98 trucks in Gaza?
No. I mean, I think, as far as I know, they are lost to us at this point. Madame, and then Deji.
Just a clarification on the UNIFIL, I'm sorry if I missed it, but there were some reports that it was a Hezbollah fire?
Yes, and that's what I said.
Okay, I'm
Yeah,
sorry. Thank
that's okay.
Okay.
I know I drone on.
Okay.
Yes, Deji,
Okay,
please.
okay, okay.
Please.
If I heard correctly, you said only 1/3 of the OCHA delivery has been delivered to Gaza, right?
I mean,
I think
I'm happy.
No,
As
what
I
I'm-
always
what
say,
I'm- I'm- what I'm
either
trying
I
to-
have to pay attention or you have to pay attention to what I say. But I do believe.
I think it's 1/3.
I said.
But from when?
Yes. This. As of today, by 1/3
Yeah.
for the past week. That's what I said.
Which means from the looting incident happened.
That's
1/3.
correct. Yes.
Has any of those convoy who got permitted inside Gaza encountered such a similar
I'm not
incident?
aware of any other looting
So,
incidents.
which means those are fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Another thing I want to ask about COP29. Obviously, every single time when we have those COP meetings, it's always been a very gruesome and a tiresome process to get everybody on board. Now, this year, it's still the same. What message the Secretary General would tell everybody that this? I don't know whether he cares. He think that $250 billion is okay. What is his message to tell everybody to
His
reach and
message is greater ambition, right? Focus on the ambition, and we need greater ambition.
But it seems every single time the problem is the money. It's just like
I mean,
UN.
it's a statement of fact. Edie.
On the convoy, you said that the trucks are probably lost. We've heard that one truck driver was in the hospital along with another one.
Yeah.
What about the other 96 truck drivers?
I think those truck drivers, I will double check, my belief that those other truck drivers were able to make it out safely. Okay, thank you all. I can now say happy Friday, finally, and I shall see you Monday. If we see each other over the weekend, it will not be a good sign. I mean, unless we bump into each other.